The fluorescent lights in my auto repair shop flickered as I locked up for the night, the taste of machine oil still lingering on my tongue. Most nights, that smell comforted me, a reminder of how far I'd come from the broke teenager rebuilding carburetors in his parents' garage. But that night, something felt wrong. Maybe it was the way the cold Ohio wind pushed against the shop windows, or the uneasy feeling in my chest ever since my mother's text came through that afternoon. I sat at my desk, the old leather chair creaking beneath me, staring at the message again. Honey, money's really tight this month with Dad's medical bills. We won't be able to get Emma anything for her birthday. Hope you understand. Mom. At first, my heart dropped for them, not for the birthday gift. My dad, a strong, stoic man who rarely mentioned so much as a headache, suddenly needed expensive medical procedures? The idea jarred me in a way I couldn't explain. My 7-year-old daughter, Emma, adored her grandparents. They were her safe place, her warm hugs, her Christmas cookie partners. She drew pictures of them weekly and mailed them in glitter-covered envelopes. She counted down to their visits like other kids count down to summer vacation. The thought of them being too sick or too poor to show up to her birthday gutted me. I called my mom immediately, pacing the small office as I waited for her to answer. When she finally picked up, her tone was rushed, almost rehearsed. "Oh, Isaac, you're such a good son. Dad's just going through some procedures, and insurance is, well, you know insurance." I didn't, actually, but I didn't question it, not then. "Can I help with anything?" I asked. "Bills, appointments, anything at all?" "Oh, no, we'll manage." Too quick, too dismissive. She claimed they couldn't afford Emma's present and also couldn't attend her party. After the call, I leaned back in my chair, rubbing my temples. My parents weren't wealthy, but they were stable, careful savers. They'd never asked me for money, never mentioned unexpected hardships. The unease only grew. When I got home, our living room was a pink storm. My wife Sarah sat cross-legged on the carpet, folding tiny princess dresses, while Emma danced around her in a tiara, humming off-key. I told Sarah what my mother said. Her hands paused mid-fold. "Has your mom ever mentioned anything about your dad's health before?" "No," I answered, "but they're private." Sarah nodded, but didn't look convinced. Then came Emma's birthday. 20 squealing second graders filled the community center, frosting smeared across faces and clothes. Emma lit up opening gifts from classmates, spinning in her sparkly dress like a Disney princess brought to life. But every few minutes she asked, "Daddy, where are Grandma and Grandpa?" Each time I repeated the lie, my lie now, about medical appointments and being too tired to drive. Her little face scrunched in confusion. "But they always go to Jake and Sophie's birthdays." That sentence hit me harder than I expected. My sister Caroline's Instagram was a museum of extravagant celebrations. Balloons the size of cars, towering gift piles, and my parents always front and center, smiling, proud, spoiling the twins rotten. Emma noticed it, and now I noticed it too. That night, after putting Emma to bed, I called my parents to check on Dad. My mom answered instantly. "Oh, Isaac, the party was today, wasn't it? How did it go?" Her tone was wrong, too casual, too cheerful. And in the background, laughter, Caroline's laugh, kids playing, a full house. I tried to ask about Dad's condition, but she brushed off every question like swatting a fly. "Oh, medical things are complicated. Don't worry about it. We're fine. Love ya." She hung up before I could get another word out. Something inside me twisted. Later, I sat on my laptop, searching every medical condition she vaguely mentioned. Terms like outpatient procedure, non-invasive testing, cardiac observation. Nothing matched the type of financial strain she claimed. Their insurance should have covered everything. None of it added up. I sat on the edge of my bed long after Sarah fell asleep, staring at my phone, scrolling through Caroline's pictures again. luxury vacations, designer baby clothes, $800 learning toys. My parents in every post with wide, unrestrained smiles. Smiling like they hadn't smiled for Emma in years. The truth was there, hiding in plain sight. Favoritism wasn't new. I had just been too naive or too hopeful to see it. But it was Emma's little voice the next morning that shattered the last piece of denial I had left. "Daddy, why did Grandma and Grandpa buy Jake and Sophie all those presents, but they said they couldn't buy me anything?" And there it was, a hit to the chest so brutal I couldn't breathe for a second. My 7-year-old had uncovered the truth before I did. My parents weren't broke. My dad wasn't sick. They weren't too tired to come to the party. They just didn't care enough about Emma. Or about me. And now that the fog had cleared, I realized they never had. The week after the engagement announcement felt like walking through a house where every door was slightly open, every conversation half finished, every silence full of things no one wanted to say. Elena tried to bury herself in work, but her eyes kept drifting to the clock, the door, her phone, any possible sign that Javier might call. He didn't. Not on Monday, not on Thursday, and definitely not on Saturday, when she found herself standing in the baking aisle of the grocery store, staring blankly at a row of sugar options, unable to remember what she had come for. She took a slow breath, squeezing the handle of the cart until her knuckles went white. She had promised herself she wouldn't fall apart, not over him, not again. But promises were cheap. Keeping them was expensive. Her phone buzzed. A message from Valeria. "Valeria, we're meeting at the cafe. Need to talk. Come if you can." It wasn't a request. It was the kind of text that came before news nobody wanted to give over the phone. Elena closed her eyes for 3 slow seconds before she texted back. "On my way." The cafe was crowded, humming with weekend chatter. Valeria was easy to spot. She always sat where she could see the door, her dark hair pulled into a precise knot, fingers tapping the table with the restless rhythm of someone who had rehearsed a speech 10 times but still didn't know where to begin. "Elena," Valeria said, with a sigh of relief, or sympathy, or both. "Thanks for coming." "You said you needed to talk," Elena replied, taking the seat across from her. "What's going on?" Valeria hesitated. "I ran into Javier yesterday." Of course. The universe really did enjoy using the same knife twice. Elena forced her expression into neutrality. And he asked about you." Her heart reacted before her brain did, one too fast beat, like a fist trying to break out of her ribcage. "What did he say?" "That he hoped you were okay, that he was sorry things ended so abruptly." Valeria leaned forward. "Elena, he looked torn up." Elena swallowed the bitter laugh crawling up her throat. "He's getting married, Val. Torn up isn't the word I'd use." "That's the thing," Valeria said quietly. "He didn't look like a man excited to be a groom." A long, electric silence stretched between them. "Elena," Valeria continued, "I think something happened the night after he told you." Elena looked away. "Something always happens with him. That doesn't mean anything changes." But even as she said it, the memory rose uninvited. Javier's voice breaking when he told her about the engagement. The way he reached for her hand and stopped himself halfway. The apology that sounded like grief. Valeria swallowed the bitter laugh crawling up her throat. "He's getting married, Val. Torn up isn't the word I'd use." "That's the thing," Valeria said quietly. "He didn't look like a man excited to be a groom." A long, electric silence stretched between them. "Elena," Valeria continued, "I think something happened the night after he told you." Elena looked away. "Something always happens with him. That doesn't mean anything changes." But even as she said it, the memory rose uninvited. Javier's voice breaking when he told her about the engagement. The way he reached for her hand and stopped himself halfway. The apology that sounded like grief. Valeria rested her hand over Elena. "Do you want him to explain?" Elena almost said no. It would have been easier, cleaner, safer. Instead, she whispered, "I don't know." "Then, let him tell you." "No," Elena said sharply, surprising them both. "If he wanted to explain, he would have. He chose silence." Valeria's gaze softened. "Or maybe he thinks you don't want to hear him." Elena opened her mouth, ready to argue, deny, protect the small, fragile thing in her chest, but her phone buzzed again. A message. From an unsaved number she still recognized instantly. "Javier, can we talk? Please." The world didn't spin, but it shifted, like a door unlocking somewhere in the distance, letting in cold air. "Elena," Valeria murmured, "you don't have to answer him. Not yet." But Elena already knew she would. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually. Because unfinished stories had a way of finding their way back to you, no matter how firmly you tried to close the book. She turned off her phone, placed it face down on the table, and exhaled. "I'm not ready," she said. But she could feel the storm approaching anyway. Quiet, certain, inevitable. And she wasn't sure whether she wanted to run from it or walk straight into it. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday, tucked between a gas bill and a flyer for discounted carpet cleaning. At first, Elena thought it was a mistake. Some glossy, pastel pink envelope addressed in perfect cursive to Elena Martinez. But when she opened it, her stomach dropped. A bridal shower invitation for Javier and Camilla. Valeria nearly choked when Elena showed it to her. "You're not actually thinking of going, right?" "I wasn't invited by accident," Elena said quietly. "Camilla knows exactly what she's doing." Because Camilla was smart, too smart, and she had always sensed the invisible current between Elena and Javier, the one they both pretended didn't exist until it was too late. Valeria folded her arms. "This is a trap." "Maybe," Elena admitted, "but I'm tired of running away." The restaurant hosting the shower looked like a catalog photo. White orchids, soft lighting, the smell of sugared vanilla drifting through the air. Women in pastel dresses clustered around high tables, sipping champagne, smiling too widely. Elena walked in wearing the only thing she could find that didn't scream, "I'm not supposed to be here." A simple black dress, her hair pinned back to hide the tremor in her hands. Camilla spotted her first. "Elena!" she exclaimed, gliding over with a smile that didn't come anywhere near her eyes. "I'm so glad you came." Elena forced a polite smile. "Thank you for inviting me." "Oh, of course! You and Javier were close for so long." Camilla's voice had a sugary sharpness, each word dipped in poison. "I thought it would be meaningful for you to be here." Before Elena could respond, another voice cut in. "Elena?" Javier stood behind Camilla, holding a glass of champagne as if it weighed 10 pounds. His eyes widened when he saw her. Not anger, not even surprise, something else. Something that made her chest tighten. "Why didn't you tell me you invited her?" he asked Camilla softly. Camilla's smile thinned into a blade. "Because I wanted it to be a surprise." An awkward silence fell, thick and heavy. Guests turned slightly, pretending not to listen, but listening all the same. Camilla leaned closer to Elena. "Please, make yourself comfortable. The games will start soon." Javier took a step toward her as Camilla walked away. "Elena, you didn't have to come." "I know," Elena said, "but I'm here." He exhaled shakily. For a moment, they just stood there, the noise of the party fading around them. Then Camilla's maid of honor called Javier over, and he reluctantly pulled away. "Please, Don't leave, he murmured. Elena didn't answer. The first game was harmless enough, matching childhood baby photos. Then came a trivia quiz about the couple. Elena kept her head down, answering nothing. But Camilla kept watching her, circling like a shark, waiting for the moment to draw blood. That moment came during the final game. How well do you know the groom? Camilla announced it with a triumphant smile. Everyone who knows Javier should be able to answer at least a few questions. She handed out small cards. Elena stayed blank. Camilla approached her. Oh, Elena, you're not writing. Don't be shy. After all, you two were practically inseparable. A murmur of interest spread through the room. Javier stiffened across the table. Camilla? No, really, Camilla said with false concern. I mean, you do know him well, don't you? Elena set her card down. This isn't necessary. Camilla leaned in, voice low only Elena could hear. I want them to see what I already know, that the only reason he's confused is because you're still in the picture. Elena inhaled slowly. I'm not trying to take anything from you. That's the problem, Camilla hissed. You don't have to try. Something inside Elena cracked. Not loud, not visible, but deep. She stood up. She turned around. Congratulations on your engagement, she said clearly, making sure everyone heard. I truly hope you're both happy. Then she turned and walked toward the exit, but Javier followed. Elena, wait! She stopped in the hallway just outside the restaurant, her heartbeat thundering. What was that? He demanded. Why did she invite you? What did she say to you? Javier, it doesn't matter. Yes, it does. He stepped closer, too close. I didn't know she invited you. I swear I didn't. She met her eyes, soft, conflicted, hurting. The eyes of a man carrying two lives and choosing the wrong one. Javier, she whispered, you're getting married. He dropped his gaze. I know. Then act like it. The words sliced him open. She saw it, felt it. Javier, he breathed, voice breaking. Please don't walk away from me. Not like this. But she did, because staying would destroy both of them, and leaving was the only thing she still had the strength to do.
Elena told herself that after the bridal shower fiasco, she was done. Done with the confusion, done with the ache, done with hoping Javier would choose her when he clearly wouldn't. But life had a cruel way of reopening wounds just when they started to scar. It was 3 weeks later, on a rainy Thursday night, when she opened her apartment door and found Javier standing there, soaked, trembling, and looking like a man who had run through a storm with nothing but desperation to guide him. Javier, Elena whispered, what are you doing here? He didn't answer. He stepped inside, dripping water onto her floor, breathing hard like he'd been sprinting. Elena, I need to talk to you. She closed the door slowly. It's late. You shouldn't be here. I know. He ran a hand through his wet hair. But I couldn't stay quiet anymore. Her pulse quickened. Javier, what happened? He stared at her with eyes full of something raw and unguarded. I broke off the engagement. The world went silent. Elena blanked. You what? I ended it, he said, voice shaking. The wedding is off. Elena took a step back. Javier, don't do this. Not because of me. It's not because of you, he said, but you're part of it. You've always been part of it. She shook her head, unable to process the avalanche of emotions crashing through her. This isn't fair. Camilla, she didn't deserve that. No, he whispered. She didn't deserve a man who couldn't stop thinking about someone else. Elena's breath caught. Javier. He moved toward her, slow, deliberate. I tried, Elena. God knows I tried.
but I kept feeling like I was living someone else's life. The plans, the guest lists, the apartment hunting, it all felt like a costume I was wearing. She swallowed hard. "You're overwhelmed. Weddings do that." "This wasn't stress," he said firmly. "This was me lying to her and lying to myself." He stopped just inches from her, the rain still clinging to his shirt, his chest rising and falling rapidly. "Elena," he whispered, "I love her, but I'm in love with you." A tear spilled down her cheek before she even felt it coming. "No," she whispered, "you can't say that. Not now." "When else?" he asked softly. "When I'm married? When it's too late?" "It is too late," Elena said. "It's been too late for years." Javert closed his eyes, like the words physically hurt him. "I know I'm too late. I know I ruined everything, but you deserve the truth." He reached out, gently brushing her cheek with the back of his fingertips. The touch was so familiar and so forbidden, it made her knees weaken. "Elena," he breathed, "I don't want to imagine a life where you and I just drift away." She stepped back, breaking the contact. "And what happens now? You think we can just be together? That we can walk into the world hand in hand like this didn't start with heartbreak?" Javert stared at the floor, his voice barely audible. "I don't know." "That's the problem," she said softly. "You never know." Silence filled the room, thick and suffocating. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky. "Elena," Javert whispered, "please, tell me I didn't lose everything for nothing." She felt her heart splitting open, raw and terrified. "You didn't lose everything," she said quietly, "but you haven't earned anything either." He winced, and for a moment she almost reached out to comfort him. But then she remembered Camilla's trembling voice at the shower, the look in her eyes. "Javert," she said firmly, "you need to find yourself before you try to find me." He nodded slowly, as if her words were a verdict he'd expected but hoped to avoid. "I'll go," he whispered. He reached for the door, pausing with his hand on the knob. "I'm sorry," he said, "for all of it." Elena didn't answer. He left quietly, the storm swallowing him as he stepped into the night. She locked the door behind him, leaned her forehead against the cool wood, and let herself cry. Not because he broke off the engagement, not because he chose her too late, but because she wasn't sure she could survive the aftermath of being loved in the wrong way at the wrong time. The silence after Javier left was worse than his presence. At first, Elena expected him to call, a text, an apology, something. But days slipped into a week, then 2, then 3. Nothing. Not a word. It was as if Javier had dissolved into the stormy night he disappeared into, as if breaking off his engagement and confessing his love had been some fever dream, a moment born of pressure and panic, a moment he regretted. And Elena hated that a piece of her still checked her phone every morning. Valeria noticed immediately. "You're quiet," she said one afternoon as they sat outside a cafe. "Too quiet. That means you're thinking. Thinking means trouble." Elena sighed, stirring her untouched latte. "He ended his engagement, Val." "And then what?" Valeria pressed. "He walked away." "Good," Valeria declared. "That's healthy. You both need space." But Elena shook her head. "That's not what it feels like." "What does it feel like?" "Like he's trying to erase what happened." Valeria softened, her teasing expression fading. "Elena, you told him to figure himself out. Maybe he's doing exactly that." "Maybe," Elena whispered. "Or maybe he realized he made a mistake." Valeria reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "Then that's his burden to carry, not yours." Work became Elena's refuge. Her schedule filled up with double shifts, back-to-back meetings, and overtime she didn't need but welcomed. Anything to keep her mind from drifting to the same question. Where is he? But avoidance couldn't erase memory. Every place in the city seemed to remember him. The corner bakery where they used to pick up pastries after late-night study sessions. The bookstore where they sat on the floor reading travel guides they never followed. Even the bus stop outside her apartment whispered his name when she passed it at dusk. One night, she walked home after a long shift, exhaustion settling into her bones. Rain misted the streets, glistening under the streetlights. She passed the small park near her building, a place she and Javier used to sit when they needed fresh air. For the first time in weeks, she sat on the bench. The wood was cold beneath her, the air crisp, the distant hum of the city comforting. She let herself breathe. Then a familiar voice broke the quiet. "Elena?" She froze. Slowly, she turned, and her heart dropped. Javier stood a few feet away, a grocery bag in one hand, eyes wide with shock and something else, something almost like fear. He looked different, thinner, tired, the kind of tired that didn't come from lack of sleep, but fighting battles no one could see. "What are you doing here?" she whispered. "I live nearby," he murmured. "Moved in with my cousin for a while." Her chest tightened. "Oh." An awkward silence stretched between them. "You look good," he said, offering a tentative smile. Elena shook her head. "Javier, you don't need to pretend this is casual." He let out a shaky laugh. "Nothing about this has ever been casual." For a moment, neither of them knew what to do. The bench between them felt like a border neither wanted to cross. "How have you been?" Javier asked softly. Elena considered lying, but she was too tired. "Not great." He inhaled sharply. "Because of me?" She didn't answer. He nodded as if she had. "Elena," he said, stepping closer, "I didn't disappear because I regretted what I said. I disappeared because I didn't know how to be the man you deserve." She looked up, heart caught in her throat. "I've been going to therapy," he continued, surprising her, "trying to understand why I've been living my life based on everyone else's expectations, why I kept hurting people I care about." Her breath hitched. "Javier." "I'm not here to win you back," he said quickly. "I'm not even here to ask for anything. I just wanted you to know that I heard you that night, every word." He rubbed the back of his neck, embarrassed. "I'm trying to fix myself. For me. Not for you, not for Camila. For me." Elena felt something shift, something small but real. "What do you want from me?" she asked softly. "Nothing," he said. "Just maybe the chance to talk. Eventually. When you're ready." She didn't respond. She wasn't ready for anything, not hope, not closure, not new beginnings. But when she stood to leave, she paused. "Javier," she said, meeting his eyes, "thank you for telling me." His shoulders relaxed, just barely. She walked away first. But for the first time in weeks, the silence didn't feel so heavy. Elena didn't expect Javier to keep his distance, but he did. After their brief, fragile encounter in the park, he didn't text, didn't call, didn't accidentally appear near her workplace. He honored her need for space with a discipline she'd never seen in him before. And that, strangely, made her think of him more. Weeks passed. Life softened around the edges again. Elena focused on work, her friends, her apartment, anything that reminded her she had a life separate from the gravity Javier always seemed to pull her into. Yet somewhere in that quiet, a question lingered. Can people really change? Can he? Can I? Valeria noticed the change long before Elena admitted it. "You're calmer," she observed one morning over brunch. Elena raised a brow. Calmer? Calmer in the way people are when they're trying not to admit they're hopeful. Elena stabbed her pancakes. "I'm not hopeful." "You're lying, and you're not even good at it." Elena sighed. "He said he's working on himself. He looked different, like he actually meant it." Valeria softened. "Elena, nobody's telling you to run back to him. Just don't close doors that might need to stay open." I'm not closing anything, Elena said quietly. I'm just trying to understand what's left of us. 2 more weeks passed before fate intervened again. Elena was volunteering at the community youth center, helping kids paint murals for the summer program. Her hands were stained with dried blue paint when she felt someone watching her. She turned, and her breath caught. Javier stood by the doorway, holding a bag of art supplies. When she walked over, he raised it like a peace offering. They said you were running low on brushes, he explained. I was nearby and thought, well, I thought I could help. She stared at him for a long moment. He wasn't intruding, he wasn't pushing, he was simply there, present and quiet, like someone learning how to show up the right way. Thank you, she said. He smiled gently. Can I stay and help? She hesitated, then nodded. They painted alongside the kids in a companionable silence. Javier seemed lighter, less restless. He laughed with the children, let a 7-year-old smear paint across his cheek, and didn't complain when another spilled water on his shoes. It was strange, watching him like this. Not as a man torn between 2 lives, but as someone rebuilding himself from the inside out. During a break, he walked over to where she was rinsing brushes. Elena, he said softly, I know I don't deserve a second chance. I know I broke things between us, things I can't undo. She stared at the running water. Javier, but I'm here, he continued, voice calm, not to force anything, not to rush you, just to show you that I meant what I said, that I'm working on myself. She looked up, meeting his eyes. There was no desperation there, no manipulation, just sincerity and a cautious hope. I can see that, she admitted. His shoulders eased, as if those words alone were worth more than a promise. I'm taking it slow, he added. Therapy, working part-time with my cousin to stay afloat, trying to actually listen to myself, to others. And how's that going? She asked. He smiled awkwardly. Messy, but good. Better than I expected. A small laugh escaped her. That sounds about right. I don't want to push you, he said, but if you ever want to talk or walk or just sit somewhere in silence, I'd like that. Elena felt a knot loosen inside her chest. Not fully, but enough. Maybe, she said softly. Not today, but maybe. Maybe is enough, Javier whispered. 2 days later, Elena received a text. From Javier. There's an art exhibit opening Friday night. Local artists. I thought of you. No pressure at all. If you're busy, totally okay. Elena stared at the message for a long time. Her old self, hurt, exhausted, afraid, wanted to delete it. But the newer part of her, the one struggling to heal, typed back. Sounds nice. I'll think about it. She didn't commit. She didn't reject him. She allowed herself the space in between. For the first time in months, something felt possible. Not guaranteed, not perfect, not a fairy tale, just possible. By the time Friday night arrived, Elena had convinced herself she wasn't going. She had work, she was tired, she didn't want to send the wrong message. She told herself every excuse in the book, but as she stood in her bedroom staring at her closet, she realized the truth. She wanted to see him. Not to chase the past, not to restart something broken, but to see who he was becoming. So she chose a soft cream blouse, a pair of dark jeans, and a coat she had forgotten she loved. She didn't dress to impress, just to feel like herself. When she arrived at the small downtown gallery, she almost turned around. The soft glow from the windows, the murmur of conversation, the faint smell of acrylic and wine, it all made her chest tighten with nerves. But then she saw him. Javier was standing near a sculpture, hands in his pockets, looking more grounded than she had ever seen him. When he spotted her, his expression didn't explode with joy or shock. It softened, as if he'd hoped but hadn't expected. "Elena," he said quietly when she reached him, "you came."
I said I'd think about it, she replied. I thought about it. He laughed under his breath. I'm glad. The moment felt careful, like they were walking across a fragile bridge where every step mattered. They wandered the exhibit together, moving slowly from painting to painting. Javier asked questions, not about her, not about them, but about the art. He didn't hover, didn't crowd, he let her lead, stepping in when she invited him, stepping back when she needed space. It felt easy, which terrified her. At the back of the gallery, they paused in front of a large abstract piece. Deep red smudged into dark blues, streaked with gold. What do you see? Javier asked. Elena took her time. Chaos, but intentional chaos, like the artist wasn't trying to hide the mess. He nodded. I like that. She looked at him. Do you? He met her eyes, and something unspoken hung between them. Yes, he said softly. I think I'm learning how to stop hiding mine. Her breath caught. He didn't push further. Instead, he turned his attention back to the painting, giving her space to sit with his words. A few minutes later, they stepped outside into the cool evening air. The city hummed quietly. Distant traffic, laughter from a nearby restaurant, the soft breeze sweeping fallen leaves across the sidewalk. You want to walk a little? He asked. She nodded. They walked side by side, not touching, letting the silence fill with the rhythm of their steps. Every so often, their arms brushed lightly. Each time, Elena felt a faint spark, dangerous but familiar. After a few blocks, Javier spoke. I didn't ask you here to make anything happen, he said. I just wanted to spend time with you, without all the heavy history between us. That's impossible, she said gently. The history is part of us. I know, he replied, but it doesn't have to define what comes next. She looked over at him. What does come next, Javier? He exhaled slowly. Whatever you're comfortable with. A conversation? A friendship? Nothing. I won't decide for you. His restraint touched her more than any dramatic confession ever had. She stopped walking. Javier, she said softly, I'm not ready for anything big. Not a relationship, not a decision, not a promise. He turned to face her fully, expression calm. Okay. But, she continued, voice trembling, I don't want to cut you out of my life either. A quiet smile tugged at his lips. Then, we take it slow. Slow, she echoed. As slow as you need, he promised. She studied him. The gentleness in his eyes, the steadiness in his posture. This wasn't the Javier who had broken her heart with indecision. This wasn't the man torn between two lives. This was someone trying, someone growing, someone healing. Her chest warmed with something cautious and delicate. Javier, she said, thank you for being patient. Thank you for giving me a chance, he replied. They resumed walking, the night cool and soft around them. The city lights reflected in puddles from a rain earlier in the day. Elena felt not certainty, not safety, but possibility. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough. When they reached her apartment building, Javier didn't ask to come up. He didn't linger in a way that demanded anything. Instead, he stopped a step away. Good night, Elena. Good night, Javier. He waited until she was inside before walking away. She watched from her window as he disappeared down the street, steady, unhurried, carrying the quiet hope of someone who finally understood the weight of moving carefully. Mara couldn't remember the last time she'd felt this heavy. The night pressed in around her as she sat in her parked car outside Daniel's apartment building, fingers gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles hurt. She knew she shouldn't be here. She knew every instinct she had left was telling her to leave. But the truth, sharp, humiliating, relentless, wouldn't let her breathe until she dragged it out into the light. Because Avery had lied, and Daniel had lied,
and Mara was done being the girl everyone pitied behind closed doors. She climbed the stairs one breath at a time. The hallway was quiet, the smell of someone's late dinner lingering faintly in the air. She stopped outside his door. For a moment, she let herself hope she was wrong, that all of this was just her spiraling again, just trauma reshaping shadows into monsters. Then Daniel opened the door, and the first look on his face, guilt before surprise, crushed whatever hope she'd had. "Mara," he said, voice low and uneven. "It's late. Is everything—" "Is she here?" No trembling, no hesitation, just the question that had been chewing at her ribs all day. Daniel froze. His eyes flicked behind him, just for a second, but enough to split her open. Mara pushed past him and stepped inside. Avery was standing near the kitchen counter, barefoot, wearing an oversized t-shirt that definitely wasn't hers. Her hair was wet, like she'd just stepped out of the shower. She looked like a woman who had made herself comfortable. "Mara?" Avery started. "Don't," Mara snapped. "Don't say my name like you didn't destroy everything." Avery's face twisted, somewhere between defensiveness and fear. Daniel closed the door quietly behind them, as if volume mattered anymore. "Mara, listen," Daniel tried, stepping forward. "It's not what you think." "Oh, really?" She laughed, a sound raw and broken. "Because it looks like my best friend is sleeping with my ex-fiancé less than 3 weeks after I left." Avery winced. "We didn't mean for it to happen like this." "How adorable," Mara said with a venom she didn't recognize in herself. "Did you not mean the sexting while I was in therapy? Did you not mean the midnight calls? Or the sudden concern for Daniel's well-being that required you to be alone with him all the time?" Daniel stepped closer again. "Mara, please." "Stop saying my name," she whispered. "You lost the right." Silence stretched tight and thin between them. Avery folded her arms. Her voice was small but defensive. "Mara, you were pulling away from both of us. You were distant, angry, shutting everyone out. Daniel needed someone too." Mara stared at her, stunned. "So you slept with him because I was struggling?" "It wasn't like that," Avery said quickly. "We connected. We talked. We didn't plan it." "Trauma bonding over how difficult I was?" she shot back. "Must have been romantic." Daniel's face fell. "Mara, please. You're hurting. And I messed up. But I didn't cheat. Nothing happened until after you ended things." "Because you knew," Mara said quietly, "that if you cheated before, I would have found a level of anger you couldn't handle. So you waited. You waited until the ring was off and pretended that made it moral." He swallowed hard. "I'm sorry." "You're sorry you got caught," she corrected, "not for what you did." Avery's eyes brimmed with tears, but Mara felt nothing. Not compassion, not grief. Just an emptiness so deep it felt like silence inside her bones. "You two deserve each other," she said, "because only someone who can lie like that could stomach someone who can betray like that." Avery stepped forward, desperate. "Mara, we love you. This doesn't mean we didn't." "Love?" Mara said, her voice sharp as glass. "If this is your version of love, keep it far, far away from me." She headed for the door. Daniel blocked the path with a hand on the frame, panicked. "Please, don't leave like this. We can talk. We can figure it out." Mara lifted her eyes to his, and he finally saw it. She wasn't breaking. She was done. "Daniel," she said softly, "move." He did. Mara stepped out into the hallway without looking back. Each step felt like reclaiming something she had lost long before this night. Her dignity, her clarity, her refusal to be someone's emotional trash bin. When she reached the parking lot, the cold air hit her face. and for the first time in months, she could breathe. Not because it didn't hurt, but because at least now, she finally knew the truth. The next morning, Mara woke up with the kind of exhaustion that didn't come from lack of sleep, but from emotional whiplash. Her chest felt hollow, like someone had carved out the center and left only the outline of who she used to be. She lay still for a long time, staring at the ceiling, letting the silence settle around her. No phone buzzing with Daniel's long paragraphs, no voice messages from Avery pretending everything was normal. No tangled knot of lies for her to untangle. Just quiet. And then, her phone vibrated. For a moment, she thought about ignoring it, but she forced herself to look. Her stomach tightened when she saw the name. Avery's mom. Mara almost let it ring out. Almost. But something in her, habit, loyalty, stupidity, made her swipe to answer. "Mara, sweetheart?" The woman's voice was warm, worried. "Is everything okay?" Mara shut her eyes. "Did Avery call you?" "No, actually, she's not picking up. But I talked to my sister, and she said she saw you leaving Daniel's building last night looking upset." Of course, this town had eyes everywhere. "Mara," the woman continued gently, "what happened?" Mara swallowed. I can't get into it, but just know I'm taking space from both of them." There was a long pause. Then, surprisingly, "Good." Mara's eyes snapped open. "What?" "I've had a feeling something was off," Avery's mom said. "The way they started spending time together, the secrecy. I didn't want to believe it, but I'm so sorry, honey." Mara felt tears sting her eyes, unexpected, unwelcome. She didn't want sympathy. She didn't want validation. She wanted her life back. "Thank you," she whispered. After they hung up, Mara sat up slowly. She hadn't cried last night, not really, but now the tears came hot and relentless, not for Daniel or Avery, but for the version of herself that had believed them so completely. She was grieving her own naivete. By noon, the group chat with her cousins had exploded. A cousin had seen Avery's car at Daniel's building early that morning. Another had heard someone at a local cafe gossiping about the best friend fiancé love triangle. The whole thing spread like wildfire. The problem wasn't the rumors. The problem was that every rumor was true. Mara muted the chat and threw her phone onto the bed. She needed out of the apartment, out of her head, out of her own breathing. She got in her car and drove to the lake. It was empty this time of year, cold, gray, wind slicing across the water, but the solitude felt like medicine. She sat on a bench and watched small waves break against the shore. For the first time since last night, she let herself think without interruption. Daniel and Avery were together. Not might be, not maybe, not could be. They were. And yesterday's confrontation had confirmed that their connection had been building long before Mara walked away. She replayed the look on Daniel's face when he opened the door, the guilt, the hesitation, the fear. She replayed Avery's trembling excuses, the way she used the phrase, "you were pulling away," as if Mara's trauma gave them a permission slip. The more she thought about it, the more a new emotion began to sprout beneath the grief. Anger. Cold, clarifying, deserved. Not rage, no. Something steadier. Something that made her sit up straighter. She wasn't the villain. She wasn't the one who broke trust. She wasn't the one who made choices in the dark and hoped no one would turn on the lights. She had been honest. She had been faithful. She had been trying. They were the cowards. And for the first time since everything fell apart, Mara realized she didn't want either of them back in her life, not even if they begged. Which they inevitably would. because guilt always comes calling. And Mara was done answering. Her phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. She frowned and opened it. "Hey Mara, it's Lucas, Daniel's cousin. Can we talk?" Mara stared at the message, confused. Lucas barely knew her. They'd spoken maybe twice at family events. Why would he? Another message. "It's about what's going on. I think you should know something." Mara's heart slowed. "Something?" She typed back, cautiously. "What is it?" The typing bubble appeared instantly. "Not over text. Can we meet?" Mara hesitated. She didn't know what this was, but everything inside her whispered, "This is about Avery and Daniel, and it doesn't feel like good news." She exhaled shakily. "Okay, when?" His response came fast. "Now." Mara met Lucas at a small coffee shop on the far side of town, the kind of place where nobody knew her, nobody knew Daniel, and nobody cared enough to stare. The air smelled like cinnamon and old wood, and a thunderstorm threatened outside, casting the world in a strange half-light. Lucas was already there, sitting in a corner booth, bouncing his knee anxiously. He looked up the moment she walked in, relief crossing his face like he'd been holding his breath. "Mara," he said, standing to greet her, "thanks for coming." She slid into the booth across from him. "You said it was important." "It is." He ran a hand through his hair. "Look, I'm not doing this to stir drama. I'm doing it because someone should have told you the truth a long time ago." Mara's pulse skipped. "About Daniel and Avery?" Lucas inhaled deeply. "About a lot more than that." The server dropped off 2 glasses of water, but neither touched them. "Okay," Mara said quietly. "Just tell me." He nodded, bracing himself. "Daniel didn't tell you the whole story about that night at the cabin 2 years ago, did he?" Her stomach twisted. The cabin, the place where she'd had her first panic attack, the night that changed everything. "He told me enough," Mara replied. "He said he met some friends after I went to bed, that he forgot to check his phone, that—" Lucas shook his head hard. "No, that's the version he wanted you to believe, but that's not what happened." Mara's throat dried. "What do you mean?" Lucas leaned forward, eyes full of guilt. "Daniel didn't go out to meet our friends that night. He went to meet Avery." Mara felt like the floor dropped out beneath her. "No," she whispered. "Avery wasn't even—" "She was," Lucas interrupted softly. "She drove up there. They met behind the cabin near the fire pit. I know because I saw them when I went out to get firewood." Mara's breath grew shallow. What were they doing?" Lucas swallowed hard, holding hands, whispering, arguing about you. Every word hit Mara like a punch. "They didn't kiss," Lucas said quickly. "Not that night. But they crossed a line, Mara. Daniel told her he wasn't sure your relationship was going to last, that he felt like he had more chemistry with her." A buzzing filled Mara's ears, like electricity, like static, like her own heartbeat trying to outrun the truth. "Why are you telling me this now?" she choked out. "Because this morning Daniel called me," Lucas said. "He said he and Avery want to come clean to you together. But not because they're sorry, because they want to control the story before you do." Mara closed her eyes, trying to breathe through the crushing pressure in her chest. "They're planning to tell people you and Daniel were already drifting apart," Lucas continued. "That last night wasn't cheating, just bad timing. They want to make it look mutual." Rage flickered behind Mara's ribs, hot, focused. "So they want to rewrite the past," she said. Lucas nodded. "Exactly. And I couldn't watch that happen. You deserve the truth. All of it." Silence settled between them. Heavy. Final. Mara wasn't the type to cry in public, but tears slid down her cheeks anyway. Slow, silent, unstoppable. Lucas's voice softened. "I'm really sorry, Mara. They've been lying to you for years." She wiped her face with shaking hands. "No," she whispered, her voice transforming, steady, fierce. "Not anymore." Because suddenly everything made sense. The weird tension between Avery and Daniel in the early days, the way Daniel always defended Avery, even when she crossed lines, Avery's obsessive need to compare herself to Mara, the private fights, the accidental touches, the just friends excuses. They hadn't fallen into something last night. They had been building toward it for years. And now they wanted to make her the unreliable narrator of her own life. Mara straightened, her hands no longer trembling. "Lucas, thank you," she said. "I don't know what I'm going to do yet, but I promise you, I'm not letting them rewrite the story." He nodded. "Do you want me to talk to anyone? Back you up?" She shook her head. "Not yet. I need to think." But deep down, the plan was already forming. She didn't want revenge. She wanted truth, clarity, freedom. She wanted the version of herself who had been buried under their lies, quietly, subtly, deliberately, one doubt at a time. Mara stood. "I should go." Lucas rose too. "If you need anything, really, just call." She managed a small, grateful smile. "I will." Outside, the first drops of rain began to fall. Mara walked into the storm without a jacket, letting the cold wash over her skin like baptism, like she was stepping out of one life and into another. She wasn't healed. She wasn't okay. Not yet. Not yet. But she was awake. Fully, painfully awake. And once you wake up, you don't go back to sleep. Not for anyone. Not ever again.